All right, hi everyone. This is Anthony Bonaspina, CEO of LI Tech Advisors, and this is another one of our bi-monthly webinars where we bring in an expert speaker. In our case today, we have the honor of having Rob from Assured Partners, who is an expert in cyber insurance, which is very much needed these days in regards to you running a business, a healthy business, and surviving a cyber attack. I'm Anthony Bonaspina. Like I said, I have been doing this for 30 years and I will continue to do it as long as I can. And here's Rob. I'd like you to introduce yourself, Rob.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Tokarczewski. I'm Vice President of Commercial Lines over at Assured Partners. Assured Partners is one of the largest full-service insurance brokers in the nation. My area that I get involved in not only is in property and casualty, so all the aspects of the different business policies that you would need for running your business and protecting your business successfully, but specifically I focus on emerging risks, cyber being number one of the emerging risks. I'm excited to be here with Anthony. We've worked a lot in the past, and it is a topic that is very much misunderstood and very much in need of greater awareness still.
Okay, let's start with like the common misunderstandings about cyber insurance. I gave you my own case for my own business several years back. I had a liability insurance policy for my business. I said, "Oh, that's enough." Many years back, I think that was enough. Then I said maybe get a rider on it or increase the policy. And I realized that maybe that wasn't the way to go. What's your input on
Yeah.
that?
No, and things have just really over the last 4, 5, 6 years have really spiraled into this huge area of that is needed for protection. And I kind of group it into three ways in looking at cyber insurance and the discussions that I have with both clients as well as with folks at the different events that I go to. The first is I don't need it. The second is I already have it. And the third is I just don't understand it. The first being I don't need it. And to your point, Anthony, when you mentioned about your business, businesses are rapidly changing, especially in a post-COVID era where you're getting involved in other things. There's mergers and acquisitions. There's new customers that you're taking on. You're moving into new facilities. There's so many different moving parts to the business that where you are today versus where you were previously. And I have the first conversation is with the folks that say I don't need it. I don't need it. I'm too small. I'm not in an area that's of much value to hackers. And I liken it to theft in that you walk up a street and you have the bad actors that are going to, if they're going to look to steal cars, it's going to be one of two reasons. One, they're walking up the block and there's a whole bunch of cars and they're looking to see which door is open that they can get in and more easily than wind up stealing a car. And the others that go to a block and they say, I have a list, I have a specific, I want a BMW, I want a Mercedes, I want a Lexus, and they have a specific target in mind when they do it. Either way, the need for the protection and a lock on that door, having it garaged or whatever you could do to help cut down on whether they're there to steal your car specifically or they're there to steal a car. So that's the thing. And the smaller businesses, you don't maybe have much value in your mind, but to a hacker, you could have a tremendous amount of value because you're part of a supply chain or ecosystem where you're connected nowadays to so many different other businesses through obviously the internet. And then the second piece of the conversation, and Anthony, you can appreciate this, is you work with some of your clients and they want to put in some of the best and most advanced or sophisticated cybersecurity software and solutions in place. And they say, well, I have no need for it because I have this $4 million system that I just worked to put in. And that's just a fallacy also in that you do have a great system in place. And if you're working with companies like Anthony's, you know that it's been put in place and it's being monitored and it's being updated. However, you do want to make sure that you have that backup because that cyber insurance is really just a transfer risk. So how much risk you want to transfer, just as true with any insurance policy, is how much you want to hold on to and how much you want to transfer. If you have all the right things in place, then you're going to transfer less of the risk because you're going to take more of that risk on because you have these policies in place. And in that case, you'll have a cyber insurance policy that maybe is much more cost effective, but doesn't have maybe some of the bells and whistles on it that others would not have on it. So
I
that's
like,
the first group.
yeah, that's a part of that is that clients ask me all the time, but I have all the stuff in place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do I need this? Why do I need cyber insurance? I said, listen, the Pentagon was hacked. Homeland Security was hacked. You're going to get hacked. It's about mitigating it and then having it where you have something in place in the event of an attack. You have a way through, a way to make yourself whole again. And
Right.
like you said too, it's about you want to be able to go to bed at night and put your head down on a pillow. And a scale of 1 to 10, you want to be upwards close to 10 as far as peacefulness. So you need all these pieces together.
Right. And the other thing too is, and you've seen this before, is that you do put these sophisticated systems in place. The problem is that when you're getting involved, you in some cases the bad actors may already have been or are already in the network. So you're really closing the barn door after after the bad actors are already in it. The second grouping that kind of comes to your point, Anthony, is the folks that I already have it. I have a policy in place. So I'm covered regardless of the cyber issue. And as the frequency and the severity and the complexity of the attacks that occur that are out there, you may have a policy in place, but if you haven't reviewed it or you really don't know what's part of it, you may have a cyber event that take place that you may have no or limited coverage. And the last thing you want to find out when something happens is that I had a policy, I thought I had coverage, and it turns out that I had a sublimit or I had an exclusion as to this type of policies. So that's the ones that already have it. I always say review those policies, especially on renewals, because you want to make sure that there's no changes to any of the terms and conditions, regardless of the pricing, but the terms and conditions and any of the endorsements or exclusions. And the second part of the ones that already have it is, hey, you know what? I just had Anthony in and we put in this $4 million software solution. And so because I have it, geez, I'm going to get the best pricing and the broadest terms and conditions because I have the most sophisticated software system. And that's not the case if you're not working with your broker and the carrier knows that you're working with Anthony and Long Island Tech Advisors, that you're working, that you have these systems in place, that you have not only the prerequisites that they look for the protections like multi-factor authentication and etc., but also that you're monitoring the system, that you're updating, that you're providing your IT guys are providing the protocols to ensure that this system is tip top and it's really most current in terms of any patchwork that's getting done. Yeah.
To answer that too is that we add to that. We basically have a VCAO and alignment managers and every client we have. We'll review the cyber insurance application when they get it. We also ask them when their cyber insurance expires so we can make sure like a month ahead of time, we're proactively looking at everything, making sure that we're ready to help them with filling out that application because it's no longer one sheet of paper with 5 check boxes. These things are books.
Yes.
So it's very important that you have your IT provider review that along with you. And again, it's going to be no surprises because all year we've been working with the client in a proactive nature to make sure that we're keeping this in mind, that we have things in place, we schedule it out and so on. For the time that this does come up for renewal, we're ready. We're going to have the questions answered.
And underwriters like that. Underwriters love when I tell them that I have a client that's working with Long Island Tech Advisors and others, because they know that they see the name come up. They know that it's as a third party company. A lot of times you guys are on top of the foremost in terms of understanding what's required out there.
And that brings us to the next thing about filling out the application and
Yeah.
questionnaire properly. So go through that. What is that? What is the most things here you need to be concerned about?
If we had done this podcast 5 years ago, you'd notice that I have a lot less gray hairs than I do now. I think some of the additional gray hairs that have been added on to my head over the last several years really revolve around cyber, right? Because I do get so involved in this as an area of mitigating for companies. And, the first and foremost true of any kind of insurance, as I mentioned earlier, insurance is a way to transfer risk. How much risk or how much that you want to hold on to, how much you want to transfer it in the form of to an insurance carrier really depends on yourself and what you're looking to protect. So first and foremost for cyber insurance and really for any insurance is determine what's the most value to you in your business. Is it your intellectual property? Is it your network or your connections to the clients? Is it the fact that you're you're housing millions of dollars worth of online funds? Whatever it might be, you first focus on what's the most value. In terms of filling out that cyber application, Anthony, you nailed it right on the head. And that application is going to be 9, 10, 11 pages long, and they're going to ask questions. And you've seen it before where if there's more than one carrier and application that you're looking at, they're asking the same question, but they may be asking it in a different way. So the last thing you want to do is fill out the application incorrectly. So you turn into guys like Anthony that understand and that know this, or they in turn also work. I get a lot of questions. We work a lot on these applications on a regular basis because you want to get it right from the start. And there's several reasons for that. One is that obviously the more information the underwriter has about the types of protocols and types of systems and the types of things that you're doing to mitigate the risks from the cyber, the better they're going to like you. The better they like you as a risk, the better pricing and the more broader terms you're going to have. You want to make sure that they understand that. And then on the flip side is, God forbid that there is some sort of event that happens and you do need to utilize your policy. The last thing you want is for the carrier to say, oh, you said you had X, but then they wound up when the forensics takes place and we find that there was a breach and you didn't have X in place. I had X in place, but I didn't have it in all avenues of the business. Or where you say, you incorrectly put something down, you say, I don't have it, and you wind up getting priced more expensively for a policy when you really do have it in place because you just didn't understand it. So really turning to folks that understand and see this is really essential.
Yeah, one of the things is that I was asked this by one of my clients, and actually we came out with a solution of what's the first call you make? You get a hack. Who's the first person you call? All right. And basically it came back as their attorney. And the reason is client attorney privilege. You enact that immediately. And this way you can handle things through properly. Your attorney's involved to make sure things get handled properly, because there's sometimes with an educational hack, you're dealing with state agencies, federal agencies, local agencies. It never ends. So you want to make sure things are handled and done in a properly timely manner. Though one of the things that was always a question: who's the first person I call?
Yeah, and that's a great point. And just go back for 1 second, Anthony, because that's a great point on this. In that, when you talk about the essentials on this, you have a lot of different factors, and I'm sure you've worked with some of your clients regarding putting together a cyber incident response plan. And I think we're going to talk about that later on. But that's something that I want to introduce to the audience here, or just I'll say throw that out there. We can kind of park that till later, but that's going to be essential because that's the first person. So what's the chain of events that take place after that? You don't want 4:00 in the morning when you find out that an event has occurred to try to figure out what's the steps to take because speed is of the essence. And I would say that's a big thing that I know we're going to address later on, but I do want to make sure to throw it out there as being essential as part of things.
All right, trends, what's happening, what's going on in the market and so on, and which way things are going. Like I said, those forms used to be one piece of paper, 5 check boxes, not anymore. And what's happening in the insurance industry as far as willingness to even underwrite a policy?
Yeah, that's a great topic. And the trends, I'm going to say some of it's continuing and then some of it is expanding is what we're seeing. Not to get too bogged down from the overall insurance perspective, but up until we started off talking about 4, 5, 6 years ago, where maybe you didn't need a cyber policy, there was a rush for some of the carriers to get involved because they wanted to be your partner of choice to provide you with a policy that's going to provide coverage. And what had happened was, because there wasn't a lot of understanding as to the different ways that your business could be impacted, and really the financial severity that you see because of certain types of breaches or events, what happens is that there were a lot of losses. I remember this goes back not even a couple of years ago. I talked to one of the main, I had met with the head underwriter for cyber for one of the top carriers within the cyber insurance area. And he was telling me that they were losing over $1 million a day in underwriting cyber policies. $1 million a day. That it couldn't continue. So in the beginning, 4, 5, 6 years ago, policies were very cost effective. And they still are very cost effective to get one. But then what you were getting, and it had really broad terms and conditions because there wasn't an understanding at that point. And as these losses started to occur, all of a sudden on renewals, you had a lot of carriers saying, you know what, it just doesn't make sense for me to be in this business anymore. I'm losing too much money, or I don't have a good handle on the best ways that the companies that were underwriting or individuals were underwriting, that they're how to mitigate best the concerns we have. And you have the ones that state and says, we think that this is here for long term, but you know what? Because we're unsure, we're going to price these because we've been losing money. We've been losing money and the payouts have been getting bigger and the concern. So that's what kind of happened. And then fast forward to where we are today, and 90% of businesses do have mostly mid-sized, larger companies, and I'll throw in even the smaller one. I'll say almost 90% when you throw in the smaller ones, but they have some sort of insurance, cyber insurance policy in effect now. But what's happening, or what you'll see as a trend, is that there are more carriers getting involved. So the price increases. If you've had a policy over the last several years, you've seen 40, 50, 60, 100% increase on those policies. Now, some of these policies are only $4,000, $5,000. So you're seeing it go from $4,000 to $8,000. Still cost effective, depending, again, going back to what you're looking to. But at the same time, you look at it and say, oh, nothing's changed in my mind. So why is it doubling up? Now, as more carriers are getting involved again within the market, the underwriters is more willingness to underwrite more types of cyber policies and risks. They're being more selective in their appetite. We call them in the insurance world the appetite, and the types of businesses that you have. But it's really going to translate into better pricing, and I'll say better in the form of you're not going to see those increases as much. You'll see some of those sublimits being varied. And when we talk about sublimits, it's, hey, I may have $1 million policy, but for social engineering, one of the basic breaches that would occur, you may only have $50,000 coverage or $100,000 sublimit. So even though you may believe you have $1 million policy, for certain types of occurrences, you're going to see sublimits in play. Ransomware is another one.
I have a question on that. Ransomware.
Yeah,
all right.
go ahead. No,
I had a client, a prospect. All right. I called them up. It was in the news, big school district hit with a cyber attack. They paid $250,000 at the time, which I think is cheap now, in ransomware. They paid it because they had cyber insurance. I called them up and said, listen, we need to fix this. I can help you with that. Their response to me was, we have cyber insurance already. We don't really care about fixing anything. I'm like, now, regarding from an insurance company standpoint, do the rates go up once you've been attacked and you're not mitigating, you're not putting steps in place?
I'll say it doesn't go up. They drop you. And then when you look to fill out that 11-page application for somebody else, one of the questions they ask is, have you suffered a breach? The second question they're going to ask you is, how did you wind up mitigating so it doesn't happen again? So if the answer is, I'm getting a different cyber policy, probably they're not going to see any kind of coverage from anybody from that. And Anthony, you make another good point in terms of that the cost to a business or an organization isn't necessarily just in the payout of a ransomware. It's the downtime of the organization. How much money did you lose because your business was brought down, your organization was brought down, ground to a halt, whether you're manufacturing and you're tied in with utilizing systems that now have to be shut down to ensure that they haven't been impacted. Whether you're a financial company that's billing out or doing financial transactions online and knowing, did you just in fact impact or did you infect some of your clients because you didn't mitigate it quickly enough or properly enough? So there's so many different impacts to the business from a financial perspective that aren't really taken into consideration. Forensics and the cost involved. If you have to go, and if it's a school district, they had to go and alert all of the students and the families potentially and vendors that they work with. There's a cost to that. And depending on where you're located, there's either federal or in a lot of cases state regulations that require certain type of notification and then credit monitoring that you have to pay for each of those families. Well, credit monitoring runs $10, $12 a month, and you're required to do 18 months times 10,000 clients or individuals. It gets to be pretty pricey, coverage or not, and you're not going to have enough of coverage to cover all of that.
Okay, all right. So takeaways from this.
I think there's a couple things. First, and I'll mention it again: protecting you got to determine what's the most valuable thing to your business, to you and to your business. What is it you're looking to protect? Because everything else will revolve around that. I mentioned about the cyber incident response plan. I know you have a ton of experience on that. And because of it's so important. And you mentioned about the first call being to the lawyer. I kind of liken it to back when we were in school and you had the fire drills. You knew after doing the first, second, third fire drill in class, you knew where you were supposed to line up and then where you were supposed to go to get outside. And you knew how quickly you had to do that. Even in businesses now, when they have buildings that you're in, they could have fire drills or they could have certain types of emergency responses. You get trained in that. And the same thing with the cyber incident response plan is, okay, the first call is to the lawyer. Now what do you do? What is it? And it's going to really depend on and its function. You might better than I do. Maybe you talk a little bit about that cyber incident response plan, because I think the audience really needs to have a better grasp on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the top things, all right, on a response plan is you got to make sure you're not touching the data that the forensic team is going to need when they come in. All right, you don't want to destroy. You do want to mitigate. You want to stop the attack and so on, but you also don't want to wipe a server out, for example, without having an image backup of it of what the attack looked like. In several cases, we would spin up. In our case, we have the capability of spinning up right on the backup. So we leave the server, we shut it down intact, so the forensic team can come in at a later date and take a look and see the vectors and so on, how this happened. It's very important to keep that in mind when we're doing this, but also at the same time, we want to get the business whole again. So it's why it's so important to have a response plan in place so we know what the steps are to be taken and who the first call is, the second call, and even 24/7, what needs to be done at any given time. It's just to make the business whole again. So it's very important. If I go into like the things we work on too, is that we look at things from you need the cyber insurance, absolutely, but you also need to protect your business. And that's why we look at total overall risk assessment. We look at basically doing employee awareness training, of course. There's other thing too is that we want to also do a pen test and a PII scan because it's not just like when you come in and get attacked, essentially ransomware, they encrypt everything. And if you have the right type of backup, you can restore from that and still maintain forensics for that. But the other part of it is, did the attacker get any data? Because not only that, they're going to hold that for ransom. Now, did you give them anything of value? And what's what a PII scan would go through is just personal identifiable information. We've done a scan recently, it was 25,000 files showed up. And they were a lot of things on people's desktops or in the downloads folder, 2022, 2023 tax returns, their personal returns. And it's like they didn't even know they were there. They thought they looked at them real quick, deleted them, but they were still in the downloads. So these are the kind of things that you want to make sure a business knows that there's run a scan like that, so you can at least be aware. So when you do if there is an attack, you can mitigate what they can get. The other part, which I always go, and there's requirements for this in certain organizations, is archive data. Meaning, do you really need 20 years worth of data on your primary drive? Because a hacker is going to go crazy and then take all that data from 20 years ago. Now, after a cyber attack, you're going to have to now send out notices to people from 20 years ago that aren't even part of your company anymore or clients of yours anymore. That's on our end what we see and so on.
That's it. But you know what? That's a great point about the data. As you get involved with artificial intelligence and you get involved in data as knowledge, and you have all this knowledge, and how do you harvest it to help in making your business that much more effective and making your customer experience that much better. And you customize the approach for either existing clients or new clients. All of those things come from the data that you have or you can collect. And the problem you run into is, as you said, is when is too much data that you actually have your hands on it or within your systems. And then, God forbid, there's a breach or an event that occurs, the impact and the realization that you have either regulatory concerns or legal concerns because of that data. And there's that one, and listen, the insurance industry is no different than a lot of other industries. We have all of these acronyms and we have all of these new jargon and terminology. One of the more recent terminology is, and it started really within Europe, is it's called data minimalization. And that's basically trying to have less data versus more data, but making sure that the data that you do have is getting utilized in a means to further advance your business. So really taking a look at that data. That's something you would think that on the surface companies could or should be doing, but there's just so much data out there. Everyone's just hoarding it right now with the idea that I'm going to need to harvest it in the future. So that's a great point.
People like to keep their data. That's why there's people like to keep stuff. That's why there's so many storage units out there. People are paying $3,000-$4,000 a month to keep their stuff.
Ask my wife. She says I'm a hoarder when it comes to stuff, and her view is, hey, if you haven't used it within 24 or 48 hours, it's going to the curb. So we play a game all the time. She'll take stuff to the curb on Monday night for the garbage, and Tuesday morning before garbage comes and I leave for work, I put it in the garage because I still think I'm going to need it.
It's so true. Okay, going forward now, again, there's AI happening, machine learning. There's a lot going on with that. And it's pretty much from what I understand, 80% of everything we know is going to change with AI. And that includes the bad actors who are going to be able to leverage this and so on. So there's two sides of that. One is the bad actors using it, but the other one on our end, from an MSP, from a technical advisor end, we use it to protect our clients. Okay, we have things, we basically tools and services we deploy that has this integrated into it that helps protect against it's sophisticated. It's a war out there, and for every measure and countermeasure, you have to have things in place. And then, of course, you have the Internet of Things now. Everything is getting on the internet. My refrigerator is on the internet. My toaster is going to be on the internet. Those are all soft targets, even for business, personally, and so on. There's things to think about. And regulatory compliances. More compliances are coming down from the government for organizations to make sure that you're, like you mentioned, limiting the amount of data on your machines and so on. That's going to become a regular thing. It's important to have the hooks into your systems and the services and oversight to make sure that you stay in compliance.
Well, when you talk about the Internet of Things and the security surrounding that, is we're so attached and connected, and there's so much interconnectivity that sometimes you don't even realize it. And quick story in terms of a breach that occurred several years ago, but it occurred with a bank, and it had to do with and they had some, obviously banks have some of the best protections in place from a solutions, a software solutions perspective, as well as from a personal security perspective from individuals and all that good stuff. They had a breach, and they had the vault was broken into when they came in the next morning, and that when they did the forensics to find out how someone was able to get into the branch and then bypass the system and then get in and get what they needed. It was that the bad actors and the hackers got in through, of all things, the fish tank. So in the lobby of the bank, there was a fish tank that had exotic fish in there. So it was temperature controlled so that the thermostat was linked to the built environment. And that was how they gained access to then control the built environment. When you control the built environment, not only are you controlling the lights and electricity, but also the security system, etc. So you're only as strong as the weakest link as part of the ecosystem that you're attached to. And a lot of times you may not even know that there's such a weak link out there. And it really comes down to then making sure that you're doing constantly monitoring, upgrading of systems, performing patches, performing threat mitigation by going in and simulating a breach and see if that you can, companies like yourself can get in and simulate a breach and see the impact and how long it takes to be able to determine that breach occurred. So all those things, to your point, it is, I hate to liken it to a war, but it really is. And it's just an ongoing struggle because for every measure that's taken place, there's a countermeasure to it. And then after that countermeasure proves to be effective, the bad actors come out with another one. There's such a complexity to the things that are occurring out there and stuff that is known and stuff that isn't known yet because of what AI and machine learning is bringing to the party for us as a civilization and for businesses moving forward.
All right. This was great. Rob, really thank you for having come on today. It's very informative. I learned a lot, and I'm definitely going to be reviewing our own policies as well as with new eyes with our clients and so on, and with the advice you've given. So again, thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think I mentioned to you earlier, it's the first podcast I've done. I've always shied away from them, but I know the value that you bring to your clients, and I know the value that Long Island Tech Advisors brings overall, just from a knowledge base to everybody. So I wanted to lend my voice and to help in supporting that because it's such an important message that needs to get out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.